Between San Diego and Tijuana, a 30-foot high bollard-style secondary fence is being built, about 15 miles long. It's mostly an upgrade to the existing secondary fence. Construction started a few months ago and it appears to be about half finished. There's also a relatively new existing primary fence, which is an 18-foot high bollard fence. This is the only construction taking place at this time along the 140-mile California border. Other than San Diego, the only new fence that has been built in California is a 2-mile stretch in Calexico. This is Otay Mountain, which bounds this section of fence on the east. You can't really see it in the image, but this section stops at the foothills of the mountain on the very right. This is a closer image as the fence meets the foothills. The primary fence ends just over the top of the ridge. The new secondary fence is seen on the left. The primary fence starts up again after 1.5 miles and continues on to the next town, Tecate, with some big gaps, mainly where the terrain becomes very rough. This is a view of the same area from the Mexican side looking towards the west. The primary fence is closest to Mexico on the left, and the secondary fence is on the right. The primary fence was recently upgraded also. From Google Street View, this is what the primary fence used to look like a year or two ago. It was just the old landing plate fence that could be easily climbed over. At the time, it was the only fence that was in this area near the foothills. There was no secondary fence here then. Here's a view from the U.S. side of the fence near the Tijuana airport. The fence on this side is the new secondary. You can see the shorter primary fence on the other side. There appears to be about 7 miles of this new secondary upgrade at this time. Primary just means it's the closest fence to Mexico. A close-up of the secondary fence. These gaps are left for gates, and a second crew comes along later and installs the gates. The fence is embedded in concrete, which of course makes it harder to dig under. This is a part of the secondary fence which has not yet been replaced. There were several designs used. They're showing some civic pride in Tijuana. Look how clean the fence is here. The trees planted next to the fence may help to climb over it someday, but the second fence helps defeat that. Area watched by neighbors. No littering. Avoid problems. Don't expose yourself. No littering, no waste, no rubble. Don't be pigs. A surveillance tower is seen through the fence from the Mexican side. Some of the Tijuana residents are showing some affection for the U.S. here, flying the U.S. flag. On the hill between the TJ Airport and the San Ysidro Port of Entry, construction is going on. In the foreground is the 18-foot primary, and the background the 30-foot secondary fence. In the middle are some remains of the original landing plate fence. This is a view towards the Tijuana River Valley, and over the far hill is the ocean. At the bottom of these hills where I'm standing is the San Ysidro border crossing. It has only been a couple of years that the landing plate fence you see here was the only border barrier in places in San Diego. There are still many tens of miles like that in California if there's any barrier at all. On the west side of the San Ysidro crossing, there are outlet stores where illegal crossers can mix with the shoppers and avoid being caught. I believe this area near the coast has always been more of a hot spot, and for that reason it generally had better fences already before this new fence was started. Probably for that reason it's the lower priority. This is in the river valley, as close as I can get here. The green fields are US and the hills are TJ. In between is the river. You can see the fence as the image pans across the hill. Except in one small place, the secondary fence here has not been replaced yet. The old secondary fence looks like this in places on this side. A Marine is operating a mobile surveillance truck on top of this hill. This is the only military man that I have seen or heard of actually helping the Border Patrol guard the border. I'm sure there are a few others doing the same thing. However, I think he is pretty much just driving the truck, and the video from the cameras is being transferred back to a control center for monitoring by the Border Patrol. On this side of the San Ysidro crossing, this is the only segment of the new secondary fence that has been built, about half a mile long. You can see it's so new it hasn't even rusted yet. This is on top of the hill looking back towards that new section. In the front is the old secondary fence, the white columns. We're finally on the beach. This is where the caravanners loved to do their protest and acrobatics on top of the fence before it was covered with barbed wire. This fence directly on the beach must have been one of the Border Patrol's first trials. It is actually parallel railroad rails welded together. They're not too tightly spaced either. In some places there were gaps where illegals could squeeze through. Also, the rails bend fairly easily. The smugglers could jack the rails apart and make the gaps wider. See, there you go. They may pass her a baby. They're going to pass her a baby. You'll get to see it. The fence seen from the Mexican side. The Border Patrol has always said the purpose of a barrier is not to stop all crossers, but to channel them into areas where it is easier to catch them and slow them down enough that agents have time to respond. Certainly, it would be very helpful to make major improvements in this existing fence, though. A fence will not stop fraudulent asylum seeking either. Changes in the asylum process have to be made, as the administration is trying to do now. Only a few yards from the fence, the so-called Border Angels has some meeting space and the undocumented cafe and art gallery. Headed by Enrique Morones, the Border Angels is a subversive group which portrays themselves as saints while encouraging illegal border crossing and fraudulent asylum seeking and making propaganda against border security efforts. There is a lot of anti-American paintings on the fence, some more subtle than others. This one refers to the prophecy of the eagle and the condor. The prophecy is supposed to have been made 2,000 years ago by a wise elder and foretells the unification of the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, which will produce some kind of mystical transformation. Turtle Island refers to the Americas. I gather it is supposed to mean the destruction of American sovereignty also. This prophecy was more likely made by a hippie from the 1960s who chewed one too many peyote buttons. The next video is our local Antifa lead, Jesse Cannon, declaring the U.S. to be part of Turtle Island.
I'm glad that this is the America that those migrants are trying to...
This isn't America. This is stolen land. This is Turtle Island. Shut the up with that. Look at that.
Jesse Cannon is a perfect example why better border security and immigration law enforcement is needed. Extremists are using illegal immigration and fraudulent asylum seeking as a battering ram against our national sovereignty and for radical political transformation. That's all I have right now. Thanks for watching.